Yeah, so it's hoping to achieve a few things. A lot of it is just about stopping the transfer of data out of China to the West. A good deal of it is about commercial secrets. I think they're starting to get concerned about, information flowing in the other direction. But mostly, a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the language in the law appears to be a little bit of a throwback to the Maoist era. The idea that citizens themselves can participate in counter-espionage, which you would assume is a fairly professional activity, is kind of surprising in looking at this new law.
Yeah, and just to quote one of the lines, it says they want to create a normalised mechanism for the masses to participate in counter-espionage work. I mean, that amounts to people spying on one another.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary that it's so explicit. I mean, it doesn't change anything greatly. This has been going on for a long time, but that it's so explicit is amazing. And that there's an online form, which I just checked out. When you go to this form, there's all this kind of details you can fill in just as a normal citizen, but make sure you don't have a big video because the maximum you can upload is 50 megabytes. So, if you are going to do videos of foreigners up to suspicious stuff, keep it short.
So do you think it's mainly targeted at foreigners?
Yeah, it's pretty clear in the both in the WeChat post and in the language of the law that the target of espionage is obviously domestic people who are cooperating with foreigners, but also foreigners themselves. And you've seen in terms of the sort of people who've been arrested. People who were doing research into due diligence, for example, into Chinese companies, they were sort of the first to be targeted. The more respectable auditors are now in sort of strife, and it'll go on so on down the line until the point where ordinary company people, I think, feel a little bit unsafe working in China.
And this is such an important point because we have seen a line of US businessmen going to visit China. We've seen Australian business people trying to sort of reconsider the climate there. But this does raise concerns for their ongoing safety.
Yeah, certainly. And it's one of those things, as academics, we definitely feel a constrained environment in terms of the sorts of things we can look at. For majority of academics, there's no concern. If your research isn't sensitive, you're okay. But for people dealing in business in China is political. So if you fall foul of someone, commercially, what a great way to bring them down. You just go onto this website and report your business rival for engaging in espionage with this foreigner, and upload some photos to prove it.
Yeah, and it's all over. You made the reference to Mao Zedong, and it is interesting because we're seeming to see more and more evidence that Xi Jinping is very rooted and in his, I guess his teachings, his own behaviour, Mao Zedong's own behaviour. What does it say about the direction that China is taking?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the language of this WeChat post, they have language that says to mobilize the whole of society. So when the average Chinese citizen hears the words, I think it was Chen Shihui, Dongyuan, they roll their eyeballs, literally, because this is language straight out of the Cultural Revolution. For young people that weren't exposed to it, they probably just think, roll their eyeballs even more. But it's, he was raised in the furnace of the Cultural Revolution. His father was purged 3 times. He's a warrior of this age. I mean, he's in his 70s now, so clearly what's happened in his childhood is influencing the way he governs now.
Yeah, and we saw further evidence of that this week. Talking of purging, there was a military shake-up. 2 senior military people connected to the nuclear program were removed. They'd been removed for months, but they had been replaced. Same as the foreign minister, who was the shortest ever foreign minister. These were both Xi Jinping appointments that very quickly fell out of favour. What is going on?
Well, I mean, the short answer is no one really knows. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the whole Qingang affair is we had a whole month of rumors and sort of fantasy football, who's going to replace Qingang, and literally no one would have picked Wang Yi in the sweep. Like literally no one had his name. No one was going to bet on him, but there he is back in his old job. And the fact that no one picked it, I mean, people claiming insider knowledge, it just shows that the system is every bit as opaque as it was in the 1950s.
Yeah. Our government is considering, really looking at WeChat, TikTok, putting restrictions on those platforms. Are we right to be wary of those platforms, particularly as we're seeing this kind of more paranoid behaviour?
Look, I think it's reasonable to be wary. I mean, the general practice in my profession is you have one phone for personal use and one phone for WeChat, because it's indispensable if you want to engage with the Chinese world. If you go to China, you need WeChat to pay for your taxi, to sort of pay for everyday things. And if you're living in the Chinese world, if you're from China or you have relatives in China, it's impossible to do without WeChat. So it creates a real bind. TikTok, I think, is a completely different case, although they're often lumped together. TikTok, what its algorithm does is frankly frightening. The way it can work out your data, what you're interested in, like that. It makes Facebook look like an absolute dinosaur. I don't know what's under the hood of TikTok, but it's almost as though it can read your mind.
Well, as you say, that in itself is concerning for so many reasons. Great to talk as always, Graeme. Thank you.
Thanks, Bev.